Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, how you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, Reed?
I am good, and today this is a Mike-centric episode. We are going to call these Mike's Musings, your version of Stan's Soapbox. Uh, you are the comic book historian of the two of us. And so while I have researched a lot of stuff, you have lived through a lot more of this comic book stuff and saw the medium change quite a bit. And so wanted to give you some time today to go through something that's really changed for you quite a bit as things have gone. So I think we'll call you the Sultan of the Short Box, the
Yeah,
barista
the
of the
short
Bag
boxes
and
back
Board.
there. Yeah.
Mike, comic book conventions. They have changed a lot, and you have been around for a lot of these. So if you want, walk us through some history of comic conventions, what's changed, what's different, and how you see it.
Well, when I was a kid, I lived in New Mexico. So there weren't a lot of comic book conventions at all back then, and they certainly weren't in New Mexico. So I would just dream about these every year in the comic book price guide when it would come out. You'd read about some of the things that were happening at the comic book convention. So I always dreamed about going. Um, and I never, the first comic book convention I went to was in 2000. It's when I lived in California. And I'd started getting back into comics in the 90s and looking for those back issues. And it was just as fun as I remembered it. And but now as an adult, and I was loving it at a new level, and I'm sure probably some of you could relate. But I came across this the other day, and I just want to show you, like, we all know like what comic book badges look like nowadays. You get this lanyard, and they have like you know, f- some of them are fancy. They got the full color. This one is from this year's San Diego Comic-Con. You know, they were promoting Dexter this year, and they're just, amazing. This one's even equipped with an RFD coder there. So when you go in and out, you have to, put your badge up to the little turnstile there, and it goes beep, and it lets you pass, and it counts how many times you go in and out. It's very sophisticated, right? Well, back in 2000, this was my badge for WonderCon in Oakland. You can see it had a little handy dandy like safety pin back to it and a little staple. Like this is what the badge was. Very unsophisticated, but very cool. And I came across this today and I was just like, oh man, have comic conventions really changed? And this was, this wasn't San Diego. This was up in the Bay Area. And WonderCon eventually got taken over by San Diego Comic Con, but this is back when WonderCon was still its own original thing, and it was neat to go to WonderCon. I got in because my friend Don was a comic book publisher. He goes, yeah, WonderCon's going on. And I'm like, Don, we should go to WonderCon. He's like, oh, I hate doing these things. And, he'd been to San Diego since the beginning of time and, had done comic book conventions since the inception of conventions. And I was like, come on, Don, let's go. He's much older than me. He's like, okay, well, let's go. And I'm like, I don't have any money. He's like, don't worry. They always let me in for free. They'll let you in too. And so we went and, went into this side door, and there was a guy there, and they were like, oh, Don. He was like, oh, yeah. He goes, I don't have a badge ring. That's okay. Wait here just a minute. And, and then we got these little badges, and we got to go in, and he was off talking, and I went in, and it was small. There weren't like thousands of people there. It's like, maybe 500 people, maybe. I don't know. It was small, and there was a dealer's room, and there was no fanciness to it. like there is now. There was just, cardboard boxes, milk crates with comics in them. You know, and you're going through, and Julie Newmar was there, and she was giving away, signed autographs of her stuff. And all the comic book companies, I should have brought out all the swag because I saved all the swag because I was broke at the time. And so, like, they gave me this bag and I started filling it up with all the freebies. And every table had a bunch of freebies. So I got posters and all kinds of stuff. Oh, sure, take one. Some of the things they were giving away were these ash can editions of comics that were coming out the next year. So I got this one that's called The Silver Age. And Mark Wade was there that year. And he was, famous for writing Flash, Wally West, all through the 90s. And I loved his run. And I was like, Don, I got to go see Mark Wade, you know. So I went and I saw his thing, and there was like 25 people there listening to Mark Wade. And then after, he's like, you can come up and ask him questions or whatever if you want after the show. And you know, 18 of the 25 people left. There was me and a handful of others, and he was very nice to us. And um, he signed this ashcan copy for me. I'm like, will you autograph it for me? He's like, sure. And I was like, but you got to put the Flash on there because you write the Flash. He's like, no, I'm not the artist. I'm just the writer. I'm like, I know, but you write the Flash, man. You got to put the lightning bolt or something. And so he drew that little lightning bolt for me, which I thought was really cool. And so months later, when the comic came out, I finally got a copy of the comic. And uh, but but this was really cool. I got a couple of these ash cans there. And like I said, it was very personable. Maybe there was 1,000 people there. I don't know. But there weren't any lines. And like now when you go to Comic-Con, you got to wait online for everything. Um, you know, at the Marvel booth, you had to queue up in an app to even be afforded the opportunity to buy some of their comics that they had for sale there. And so it's crazy. And I know, and I would like to throw it to you, Reed, like there were the pre-COVID comic conventions when the movies were hot and heavy, like all the ones that we used to do here in town, the Alamo City Comic Con and Big
Mhm.
Texas. When Alamo City started, I think it was in 2012 or 2013.
Yeah, sometime in there. Yeah, we had just started working together, so it was well, I would say maybe 2011, 2012, somewhere in there.
I mean, it was insane. I was like, this is crazy because I hadn't been to a comic book convention since this one.
Hmm.
And Stan Lee was there, and I was like, man, this is crazy. There was lines for everything. There were probably, I don't know, 3,000 people waiting to get Stan Lee's autograph that one day.
Yeah.
And it was insane. But it was very exciting and invigorating because I was getting back into collecting for the third time. Um, and uh, and it was just, the culture was created. But apparently, well, in the last few that I've done after COVID, and the movies aren't as prevalent anymore, the attendance does seem down. And but apparently the prices for the dealers have not diminished. They're still sky high. And so gone are the days when the guy from, just outside of town loads up his station wagon with milk crates of cartons and comes in, a $10 table fee. That's not happening anymore. And so I don't think a lot of the locals, get to go to them anymore. They've been
What do
priced
you
out.
what do you think most has been lost? I know you've been going to these for years. As a staff, I've only been to a few. as it stands for me, even in the short time I've been going, I've probably only been to 3 or 4 in San Antonio. The focus used to be so much on the comics. That was the cool piece of it was the main panels were, hey, we've got some Marvel folks discussing this new line wide reboot or things like that. Now it's hey, a guy who played Spider-Man showing up, or there's someone tangentially connected to the MCU who will be here to sign autographs. What do you think has been lost in Comic Cons becoming less and less about the comics and more about the landscape outside of comic books?
It got crazy. I will tell you, I think they're on their way back. And case in point, San Diego this year, because there was no real movie presence there. They had the Peacemaker premiere, but that was off site, a few blocks down from the convention center. They had they had some Fantastic Four specific stuff going on. And they had George Lucas this year, but there wasn't like, the Avengers, Endgame,
Mhm.
there wasn't that fervor anymore. Hollywood had kind of, Hollywood's lost a lot of money on superhero movies. So they're present. And so Artist Alley this year was really packed. There was a lot of original art there being sold, and the artists were there for you. I got to meet Jim Zub. He made himself available. All the guys from not all the guys, but Titan Comics was there in full force, uh, presenting their stuff, and certainly Oni Press stole the show for me. That was an unusually comic centric San Diego this year. And I would also like to say last year when Bill Field and I did this one, Comic Fest, which was very reminiscent of uh, the WonderCon 2000. It was a little slicker. It was in a nice resort, but there wasn't a whole lot of people there. The dealer's room was small. It was like a large banquet room, and then they had a little history section, of course, which I loved. And then the panels were in these different banquet rooms that when we did our panels, it was more intimate. And what the story I was told is the creators of Comic Fest have been recently making a big push to turn conventions to becoming more comic centric again. And this kind of was a backlash that grew over, the 2010s, the 2015s, when comic book movies had pushed these convention centers to the limits all across the country, including San Antonio,
Mhm.
you know. Um, so I think the industry is being forced back, which I think is a good thing, in some ways. Although you and me, we love a good superhero movie, and we had Superman this year, which was really good. And but there was no Hollywood there, and Superman and Fantastic Four came out like within weeks of each other, and the same month that the big convention in the industry was happening, and you know. It
No,
didn't take
you
over.
raise a great point that it looks like Hollywood might be losing interest in the cons at least. I'm sure we'll always get a Marvel every couple of years. Fire up Hall H to get good press and things like that. But do you think this will become a good thing for comics? As far as do you think it's a pop as us as primary comic fans instead of movie fans? Do you think this trend will end up being a good thing?
I think it could, but what I would really like to press is the fact that the table fees, you have priced out, and you never know as a collector what gems, Ma and Pa Kettle have in their garage, and that, the table fees, and they bring their stuff down to sell it. I had a friend of mine who had an amazing Silver Age collection of his own, from when he was a kid. I mean, thousands, like full runs of every Marvel. It got cherry picked early on when we decided to sell it. He couldn't go to Alamo City Comic Con because the prices were too high. He's like, I can't do it. And he started selling his stuff other ways. I bought some Flash from him, his Silver Age Flash, and I met him several times and bought some of his comics. But he would do the smaller shows. And I think we need to get those people back in because his collection was awesome and you would never see it. And instead, you get these overpriced tables. So, like the big dogs come in and then they charge like ridiculous prices for their comics. It's like, it's great to see, a Daredevil one there, but, I can't afford it. Or, you know, um, you see amazing stuff there, but it's way overpriced to what you could get it outside of the convention. I think that financial reality will sink in over the next couple of years, and cons will probably go back to what they normally would be, where, a regular guy with a bunch of comics could go in and sell.
No, hopefully it gets back to it, but it's interesting to hear that history of what comic conventions were, and hopefully we get back to it. And it seems like a lot has been lost for what these
And
used to be.
the intimacy of just being able to walk up to Mark Wade, and say, "Hey, no, 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 put the flash symbol on there." And he was like, "All right, I'll put it on there." And just being able to, I had to steal that moment with Jim Zub this year, but he was so nice to do it. And it's not like something that happens regularly. And I kind of wished it did.
Yeah, it's a weird thing in that somehow comics have become the least important part of these conventions.
I know.
It's almost, if you would go to the NFL Hall of Fame and it's nothing about football. It'd be like it's just it's very weird. But
Yeah.
no, appreciate you bringing the perspective on it, sir. Next month, I think we're teeing up next month. You talking about British comic book writers and coming to the U.S. Is that what's your next my
Oh, that'll be a good discussion. And maybe we'll get Bill to do that because I don't know if you know, but he has a pretty nice collection of British comics.
Mhm.
But that's the story of how Alan Moore, you know, got to America, right?
Yeah,
And
Alan Moore and a lot of greats. Yeah,
yeah, a lot of greats. But do share in the comments below, you guys. What are your recent experiences in comic book conventions? I'd love to see them.
absolutely. Mike, thank you as always for walking us through a little comic history, folks. Let us know what if there's a historical topic you'd like to see Mike's perspective on. Let us know in the comments down below. We'll be back next month with another edition of Mike's Musings. As always, folks, thank you for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.